All right, you're live.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Rhonda Devine, and I'm with the Office of Finance and Operations, Division of District Support, Branch Manager for the Student Tracking and Data Branch. Joining me today, I have the Director of the Division of District Support, Che Ritter. I'm Director of Innovation, David Cook, our Executive Advisor, Matt Ross, along with members from my branch, Angie McDonald, Laura Lohman, and Josh Whitlow. Today's meeting will be recorded, and we will have the questions and answers document on our webpage under the KDE website under Student Enrollment tab for COVID-19. Okay, next slide, please. In today's discussion, we will cover the following topics: emergency regulations, COVID attendance groups, no-show, blended learning, NTI days, participation for performance and virtual-based courses, and we will also talk a little bit about a report for no end date or end status for students. Next slide, please. Emergency Regulation 702 CAR 7140. The emergency regulation allows districts to use 30 minutes each day to count as instructional time for districts to cover COVID-related activities, such as cleaning, sanitizing, hand washing, taking temperatures, instruction on healthy practices like hand washing and wearing face masks. It also says it can be used before school begins, during passing times, or at the end of the day. So it is incorporated into your instruction time. If you are using it in the morning, you could add a homeroom period and mark it for instruction to get the instruction time and take temperatures, or you could do the same in the afternoon. You could also adjust the schedule for the class periods to be a little bit longer so that you can increase your passing time. And if you click on the link, it will give you, you can read it, all of it. This is really just, I just pulled out the important parts of the regulation. Next slide, please. Okay, and then we have another emergency regulation, 702 CAR 1190. This emergency regulation gives employees both full and part-time emergency days in addition to their sick leave. It is only for this coming school year and cannot be carried over to the next school year. And once again, I have the link provided. There are two new attendance groups this year, and they are not attendance codes, but attendance groups. We have the QCP for students who tested positive for COVID, and then QCE for students who have been exposed. So with these groups, when a student is either positive or exposed, you would start them in the appropriate attendance group and then take them out when they return back to school. So instead of having to touch their attendance each day, you could just put them in the group and then take them out, and it's it's less time spent on each student, and that's why we've set it up that way. And since we're not currently tying participation and attendance, then that's why we're not using an attendance code. We just have the groups. Next slide, please. Okay, and I've had a lot of questions about no-show, and we have the no-show guidance document. You can click on the link. For the 2021 school year, we are giving districts 5 days to mark students with no-show. This way, it will give time to see who doesn't show up and then find out if they went somewhere else or if they are virtual, or just to give you time to reach out to a parent or guardian and find out where the child is, and then you can mark them appropriately at the end of the week. And the guidance document will give you more information. Okay, next slide. And this was what I was talking about earlier with the no end date or end status. So if you follow the path, ad hoc reporting, filter designer, state published, state enrollment, missing end date, and status, you can locate these children. So there are 13,000 students from the 1920 school year that do not have an end date or end status. And if you could run this report and fix those students, it would be very helpful. The data is pulled for other state reports, and so we really need this corrected. Josh Whitlow will also be reaching out through email to the districts about this. Okay. Blended learning, I hope that you had the opportunity to watch the blended learning yesterday. If not, it's been recorded, and so if you click on the link below, you'll be able to watch it. It was very informative, and it also provided some new information about blended learning and NTI days and how to set it up. And we're going to talk about that in this PowerPoint. So make sure if you didn't see the training that you use the link provided and take a look at it. Next slide, please. Another question that has come around about class size, and the class size remains the same for virtual as it would for seat time. The KRS 157-360 establishes class size, and you can click on the KRS. I have the link there for you. Schools with an SBDM council can waive class size caps, and schools without an SBDM must have their superintendent request an exemption from the commissioner. All right, in non-traditional days, NTI days can only be used when all students in the district are learning remotely. We do have unlimited NTI days this year. We have said in the past that this year NTI days will not give an automatic 7 hours of instructional time like last year, and that it will follow the time in your scheduled day. But there are discussions about maybe changing this. But right now, NTI follows your schedule, and I'll notify you if that does change. So for right now, when you mark your NTI day, make sure you check the school day, instruction, and you also check attendance. And then be sure to leave the duration and instructional minutes that boxes are empty. If things change and we do go to 7 hours that are given for each NTI day, then you would put 420 in both of those boxes. But right now, make sure at this particular time you leave it blank and you check the start time, the school day, instruction, and attendance. Okay, next slide, please. And then we also learned something new yesterday. So yesterday in the blended learning training, we learned of a new and great way to add groups to NTI days without having to take students in and out of the groups. So the example shows a district that has 4 blended learning groups. With the new functionality, you can make the day event NTI, check the school day, instruction and attendance boxes, and then add all of your blended groups at the bottom. So now all of your kids are in NTI where you can track participation, and you don't have to move them into a special group. All you have to do is just check and add each group to the day. And so I thought this was a pretty nice enhancement and makes it a lot easier. Okay, you can move to the next slide. Virtual performance-based participation. We now have a way to track participation for virtual and performance-based classes. We've attached the guidance document that gives you the details with the setup, and the link is provided. You can go to the next slide, please. So if you follow the path listed, you can add the course using the placeholder during the day and putting the class outside of the day as you normally would. The biggest difference is making sure the attendance box is checked. And if you go to the next slide, this is a snapshot of what the other slide said. So you would name it the COVID placeholder. You would put that state code 960001. The type is left blank and transcript is unchecked. The attendance box is checked, and then the teaching method is digital learning provider, and the instructional setting is online. This will allow participation to be tracked for virtual and performance-based kids. We do have another placeholder, 95001, for a dual credit independent study and work study. We will have the information out as soon as it's ready. We should have this documentation out on Monday. But it's basically the same setup, but you would use that placeholder of the 95001. So we feel like that's going to really help with those performance and virtual courses. I believe that's it. Yes. And then we have questions or comments from anyone.
Okay, the first one is, could you please explain the difference between marking participation of 100% virtual versus marking participation or absences of students who are hybrid at school and hybrid at home on an every other day schedule?
So you'll have your groups. So you'll have a group that's in seat and a group that's virtual. You may even have a group A, group B. It really doesn't matter where the child is physically located. They're going to be in a group, and you would go in every day and mark them for participation if they're participating, or not marking them if they are not, or marking them as not participating. If they're absent, excused, it's still the same concept. It's just that they're not in the actual seat. So will also, a lot of districts are going to mark that at the end of the week. So it gives them time to maybe reach out to the students. If they have a lot of virtual kids, they can call them, or maybe they have work packets that are waiting to come in, and then they can mark and see who actually participated. I'm sure there'll be certain assignments that they have to cover each day and get done. And if they don't do their work, then they would not get a participation mark. And David, if you feel like there's anything else to say on that question, you can add a comment.
I think you explained it pretty well. I think
okay.
To remind everybody is if they're not, the way I've been kind of trying to look at it the last little bit is, if they're not in the seat in the classroom, that's when we have this whole notion of participation by these other four methods. On those, if they're an A student or a B student on an every other day, on the days they're in class, it's just like it's always been. Look, I see Rhonda in her chair. I'm gonna check her off. So it's just on those opposite days, and if you've got your group set up, then that shouldn't be an issue.
Thank you.
Can you share the end date path again, please?
Yes, if you could go back to that. Okay, there it is. So it's in if you find that state published, you'll find that one folder or file that says state published. It's in there. It's the student enrollment missing end date and status. It came up a lot when we did SAR, because those have to be done for SAR. So.
Okay. Do we need to mark students' courses as virtual or performance?
Josh, I'll let you answer that. I'm not sure if it matters.
Hey, Laura, can you read that question again? I'm sorry.
You're fine. Do we need to mark students' courses as virtual or performance?
If they're talking about for the placeholder that we just talked about, then they're going to leave that blank. But if they're talking about for the ones outside the school day, then yes, they'll need to either mark those virtual or performance.
Can you go back to the slide where you have the snapshot? I think it's slide 15. Yeah, this way they can get a visual of that. Thank you.
Okay. Last year, we did not include attendance on NTI days. Is that a change for 2021?
If you check box the attendance, then you can track participation, and that's why we've got it set up the way we do.
Okay. Will the quarantine groups QCP and QCE show on the days at the bottom of the other groups?
Well, they just go into that attendance group, so I'm not sure what they're referring to. It's almost like a home hospital group, or it's a, you have your partial day group, you have your home hospital group, now you'll have your COVID group. So it's just an attendance group.
So both of those will show with the other groups?
Yes, it should. Mm-hmm.
Okay. How will this affect the need to reconcile daily attendance?
Let me take this one.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Josh. This year you will not be doing attendance reconcile unless you are in seat for attendance, and then your office staff or your clerk will do the exact same thing that they always have. They'll reconcile it and then push it on through where it shows on their attendance tab. But if you are in the NTI mode where they're tracking participation, your office staff will not be marking anything in the attendance side.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Is it possible for us to get a screenshot of what a teacher will see when they are marking a student's participation?
If you go to the blended learning training, it does show what the teachers will see. And it also shows, and I thought this was interesting, how you can give the rights to a parent or student to mark themselves for participation. But then if they don't participate, the teacher can go in and uncheck it. So I thought that was a nice feature, and they explicitly went through that and showed what the teacher will see. So please make sure you click on that link. Josh, can you find that slide? It's I think the third or fourth one, and it gives the blended learning right there. If you click on that link, and I sent out the PowerPoint to everyone before the meeting, so you'll be able to access this, and we'll also put it up on our COVID page for student enrollment under that COVID tab, and then you can click on that and watch that learning. It's pretty good.
Okay. How are we supposed to track participation for students in virtual performance-based who are in a college class? Those shouldn't be marked for attendance, right?
Though we're going to have that placeholder that's a 950001. It's a different number. It's a different placeholder, and you can use that to show participation. So you would set it up the same exact way, but you would use the different placeholder. And we will have documentation on that. It's ready to go. It's kind of running through communications right now, and we should have it out to everyone Monday is what it's scheduled to be sent out. So I'll make sure that I send that out to everyone as soon as it's available.
Is slide 15 about the old way of thinking about virtual? Am I correct in thinking for now all students have normal course codes and then we will put them in a virtual group?
So it's really the same setup where you've got your classes in the day, and then where you have the virtual performance, you would put that placeholder in during the day and then put the classes outside of the day, the same way that you have in the past. But it's different now by checking the attendance box and just doing a few things just a little bit differently, as shown on this slide. And that gives you the opportunity to be able to track participation instead of the kids getting the once they pass, they get 100% attendance as we've done in the past. This way, you can literally just track that participation and put it in there every day or every week.
Okay. Students that are attending in person, do they need to be put in a blended learning group?
Absolutely. You want to make sure that your kids that are in seat are in a blended group, and then you have your virtual kids in a different blended learning group so that you can show who's physically in the building and who is working from home or elsewhere. So that just for not only safety reasons, but we need to know where those kids are. So it's very important that you set up a group for those students.
If we opt to have student participation report back on the student's attendance tab, does the attendance clerk do anything to student participation similar to what they do for student attendance?
Josh, I'm going to let you have that question because I'm not really sure and I don't want to give out the wrong information.
Hey, Laura, I'm sorry. You're going to read that again. I was on something else.
If we opt to have student participation report back on the student's attendance tab, does the attendance clerk do anything with the student participation similar to what they do for student attendance?
If the district is having that right back to the attendance table, then no. The way that Infinite Campus has explained it to us is at midnight it writes all that over and sends it back to the attendance table, and then the DPPs, office clerks, whoever is going to be pulling that report, will show then on that report.
Thank you.
If we put them in an attendance group for COVID, will it show up on the day's attendance as home hospital does now with a pre-marked code?
I want to say yes, it should. It's the same scenario, but it's a different group. So it should be the same.
Okay. Will we need to worry about the schedule gap report this year?
I don't
100%.
think so.
Yeah. Yes, you will.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Each student will need to have a complete full schedule, or you will not be showing 100% on participation when it's run.
Will that also, the placeholders also kind of help with that as well, so there won't be any gaps?
Yeah.
Can you give some guidance concerning home hospital if we start 100% virtual?
Well, home hospital is different from the virtual, the blended learning. So if a child has a medical need where there's paperwork from a physician that's signed, there's a home hospital committee that has made the recommendation that the child should be placed on home hospital, then the student they could do the virtual learning, but they would also then get the assistance from the home hospital teacher who would reach out to them 2 times every 5 days for an hour each session. And if the student has an IEP, then it's very important that an ARC committee be put together and that the ARC is, they make sure they follow that ARC exactly. For whatever they recommend, the district is responsible to make sure that that child receives those services.
Okay. Che, this next question is for you. It says, can Che speak to how participation contributes to our SEEK funding along with our 18-19 SAR data?
It's a simple answer. It does not. So when you look at our usual methods of funding, ADA or AADA, and then participation, we're not mixing the two. That's why we kind of froze everything in place, because we do not have a kind of a straight line for attendance anymore, because some schools, when this was decided weeks ago, months ago, however long ago it's been, we did not know, and probably still don't know, how many schools will be in, actually have quote normal attendance, how many schools will be out. doing virtual, you'll have participation rates. And David can talk a bit about, but I don't want to throw him under the bus, but the participation rates are important as a measure of obviously participation during virtual learning. The attendance is a completely different animal than participation.
And there's no funding tied to participation, but it's a check and balance, because you want to make sure that these students are being educated and aren't falling through the cracks and getting the services and the things that they need. And I think that's the biggest. It's such a different way of thinking this year because everything has been based on attendance and with funding, and we're untying that attendance and funding. So now we want to make sure that the kids participate and get the education that they need.
Yeah, it's kind of broken my brain this year.
You guys are both absolutely right. I think it's the only way we have to, as you pointed out, Rhonda, since we can't say the kid's in a seat, it's the only way we have to say in some way that we have some record that they are doing something in the same way that they would do it if they were at school. So the hope is that we can present numbers that reflect as best we can how many kids are actually involved in their education when we can't see them. That's the way I like to look at it, Rhonda. It's the way we see kids this year. Participation is the way we, quote, see kids this year.
Thank you.
Why do you have to mark participation for a virtual performance-based program?
You don't have to. I think you can set it up, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, the old way where you didn't, but this opportunity gives you the ability to show the participation for the students to make sure that they're staying on track. You could get it at the end of the semester or the final grade, but I think in the way we're talking now, the way we've got it, the placeholder, it just gives the opportunity so that you can show participation.
That is correct. In the old way, we were not tracking the attendance placeholder, and the districts would be responsible for sending that data back to us here at KDE for us to check that and make sure that you are following the guidelines and all that. But then we have worked with departments across the whole entire agency and to get this up and running so you do not have to do your manually tracking.
Did I hear correctly on yesterday's WebEx that Kentucky is not letting students and parents mark themselves as participating, or did I hear that incorrectly?
I think that's a district decision, and unless I'm incorrect on that, Josh, but I believe that it depends on the rights that you set up in Infinite Campus on whether they can or cannot.
Yes, that's going to be up to the district decision on how they want to mark that.
And the teacher can override it, which I thought was pretty good yesterday.
Yes,
so
and that's up to the district as well. They have to make sure that that checkbox is checked as well.
Okay. I thought we were told we would not be running ADM, ADA, and register to balance attendance this year due to some students being virtual. From what was said a few minutes ago, it sounds like we will have to balance attendance if we are starting in person.
This year, you will not be running your ADM, ADA, and register report. What I was talking about is your daily attendance. When the clerk goes into, because when it comes in, it's all comes in as unknown attendance, and then your clerk comes in and makes the student either unexcused absent or excused absent. So that's the part that I was talking about when you're doing the in-seat attendance.
Okay. Do we still mark EHO and set them virtual if they are on an EHO event?
I believe that'll be a district decision as well. If they're EHO, then they're not going to be working virtually, right? They're out somewhere doing another event. So I think that depends on how you set it up with the student.
Okay. If a student that is 100% virtual tests positive for COVID-19, do we add them to the QCE, QCP attendance group?
If they're 100% virtual and they're going to do if they're still working every day, then I don't see why you would. But if they're sick and they can't do their work, then you could put them in that group. Josh, unless you know of a different answer for that.
No, not this time I don't.
Okay.
Should we use the virtual placeholder for students using a virtual option with our own teachers?
I'm not sure if I understand that question.
I'm not either. I'm not following that one.
If it's a virtual, so if you're working with your teacher and it's a virtual class, and the teacher wants to show participation every day for that child, then you would set it up with that placeholder, put the kid in the virtual, and then the teacher could mark that every day if the child is participating.
Rhonda, I think I can lend a little. I think I know what they're trying to ask. The difference is between, let's say, what we used to call a performance-based model where a kid is being placed on a platform. They're not even actually with their regular teachers. They're with another teacher who's sort of facilitating the management of the platform, as opposed to what a lot of folks are doing, which is the kids that are virtual are still in their same classes, but they're virtual. So in those cases, Josh, I would think they'd have a regular schedule set up and they'd just be in a blended learning group.
Okay.
That is correct. That's correct.
Yeah, so that's what I'm seeing the difference in what they're asking is the difference.
Okay, thank you.
If they're in a blended learning group, you don't put the virtual placeholder, you put them in their regular.
So it's the same setup, except they would be in a different group. So where you would have an in-seat group and a virtual group, but they would be doing the same work.
They're doing the same work, they're just in
different areas, different places. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Will Classroom Monitor be able to be used if we are using NTI days? If not, is there a way to see which teachers have not marked their class participation for the day?
That is something that I have set up to Infinite Campus for them to look at, or I've asked that question to them and I've not received a response yet. But I will follow up with them and then we'll put it in the Q&A.
Okay. Will students' participation be marked for each class with different teachers or just by one teacher? Will third block teacher be able to see if first and second block teacher mark the student absent or present?
No, this is going to work the same way as if you had, if you were teaching English, you're only going to see your third period English class, and if your next door neighbor teacher is teaching math, she's only going to see her roster. It's the same as if the student was in the seat right in front of you taking attendance. That part's not changing. At the top, you're going to see your in-seat kids, and at the bottom, you'll see your virtual kids.
But Josh, let me just, because I have a question about that one. But I think the other part of their question, and I just, this is kind of what we've been telling people, is they have the district has the option to set it up so they can take that participation for every class, even though we're looking sort of at the day. Am I correct about that? So
a middle school teacher and a high school teacher, they would each mark.
They're still going to mark their attendance just as normal.
Their class participation, they're still going to mark it, but right. That's what I wanted to clarify was. Yeah,
they're still going to take it.
It's not like a high school you're not going to pick a teacher in the high school that's going to choose to decide what participation is. Each one of them is going to do it.
Okay.
All students in blended learning groups now, or when we have students back in the building?
Can you repeat that?
I think they're asking if they need to put all students in the blended learning groups now or just when they have the students back in the building.
I would set it up now.
Yes.
So that you've got it all together, you've got your groups made, and as we showed in the one slide, if you could go to the NTI where they have the 4 different groups, Josh, and this is a really good reason why you'd want to do that. So this particular district, they've got the group that's always remote learning, and then they've got this A rotation group and a B rotation group. And then they've got their special ed kids that are in the building all the time. So they've got their 4 groups, and I think one rotates on Monday, Tuesday, the other one Thursday, Friday. Nobody's there on Wednesday. So by having the group set, now that the governor's recommended virtual NTI until September, all you have to do is grab all those, add those groups to your NTI day, make it an NTI, and then it's done. So it's a lot easier. And then when things go back to normal or in seat, then you could just put the groups back. Or I think everything is going to be so challenging this year that you have to be flexible enough to be able to move kids quickly. And I think having your groups set now will save a lot of time and frustration later.
Okay. If a student is virtual and they have surgery, do we move them to home hospital to show what is happening since they won't be participating in virtual for a few days?
If they're truly on home hospital, it would be the same way that you would always do home hospital. So you could put them in a home hospital group. Whatever your recommendation is from your committee is what I would show in Infinite Campus.
Okay. When will we have access to the new participation reports?
Hopefully Monday. That's what we're hoping.
Hey, Rhonda.
Yes.
The participation reports, we're still working on those with Infinite Campus.
Okay,
so
so
those are not, they're not out yet, and as soon as we have a date, you'll probably either get an email from Rhonda or Becky Jenkins to notify you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Who could we contact to help us who could we contact to help walk us through how to set up blended learning groups?
I would hope that the person asking would watch the webinar first, and then if you're still struggling, you could reach out to myself or Josh Whitlow. But I think it's a lot. It really explains it. It's a little bit easier to understand if you watch the video for the training. But Josh could help you. Or
yes.
Or
also, there's the Infinite Campus Setup Hotline. They have that open 24/7, I think, but I know it's open during regular hours. That number is 1-888-619-0011, and they'll be able to help you through any questions on setup that you have.
I also went to the Infinite Campus community, and I did a search for blended learning, and I found all kinds of information. So you can also do that in Infinite Campus. There's a lot of information.
Okay. Are there any reports we can run to show if students are not participating after the teacher marks them as no participation?
Well, that is what Josh was talking about. That's coming. So we are, hopefully we'll have that soon.
Okay, is there a certain time frame to mark participation? Does it have to be done that day, or can we backdate?
That really depends on the district. We are recommending that you give everyone a week. So maybe by Friday of the, at the end of the week, you can go back and mark your participation. I'm sure there's going to be some kids still working on packets, or maybe they're doing some type of project or different types of assessments. So we're recommending that you have the week to mark participation. It's really a district decision.
Okay. If a child is on virtual and home and hospital is done virtually, then in my opinion, home hospital has lost its true value. Does the committee have to approve a child for home hospital even though they have the required documentation?
Yes, you have to have a home hospital committee, and they make the recommendations that the district needs to follow. And you know, at this right now, I think the best word for this year is going to be flexibility, and being flexible and doing the best that you can to service the students. I know it's a lot better to have you know, Ms. Smith come to the child's house and sit with them for an hour or 2 times in 5 days, and it's a lot more personable and better, you know, really. But we, at this point in time, we can't, it's just an unknown time, and we have to be flexible and do the best that we can for our students.
Okay. To clarify, kids that are full-time in college classes, they get participation if they pass the course, or has that changed?
They get, I think with the college courses, they get their dual credit, and I think that also goes for other things, and then they can also get the participation. So that's why the dual credit has a different placeholder. And Josh, if you want to add to that.
Yes. Sure. What will happen is it depends on how your district sets it up. If you are having communication with the college back and forth, you know, once a week, twice a week, once a month, they can send you a list, and you can go back in and mark all that participation. Or if you want to wait to the end of the semester or end of the year to get that participation.
Okay. Do students have to be in blended learning groups to track participation in Infinite Campus?
Yes. If that's wrong, Josh, stop me, but
no, you are correct on that. Yes, that's the only way that you track anything in Infinite Campus is through the blended learning groups this year.
Okay. When we return to the hybrid virtual model and one of our schools can't handle their virtual numbers, can we enroll them as a secondary student at another school and let a teacher at that school service the students?
I don't think you can do that, because that would be, it's really just the same as you would have any other, you know, you enroll a student and then you have to have enough faculty to, you know, teach the students. Is that, I've never heard of kind of.
Let me do a follow-up on that question, and we'll give you a clear answer on the Q&A, because I'll need to talk with Becky Jenkins on that and see how we need to move those kids around.
Our plan was to begin face-to-face with a virtual option. Our 2 blended groups were entered based on the intent from parent interviews. Since we are now beginning 100% virtual, do we need to place all students into always virtual, or can we still use the always in person and simply put both groups in the NTI marked days?
You would put both groups in the NTI day, and that's one of the benefits, so that you don't have to keep moving kids around. So in this example, we've got the 4 different groups. You may only have 2, and so what you would do is you'd make it an NTI day, and then, you know, you check the school day, instruction day, attendance day, and then you add, when then you look, you'll add group, and then you add the 2 groups, and then all of the kids now are all NTI and virtual, and you don't have to move them back and forth. And then when the NTI is over, you just, they go back to their groups. So.
Okay. So if a kid participates in first period and the teacher marks participation, but they do not participate in second period, and the teacher marks no participation, will one override the other?
I think with participation for KDE, we're looking for that one participation mark. As far as what we would do if this child participates in one and not the other, it's really should just be something for the districts to notice. Hey, Johnny's not participating in math, and then you could maybe reach out to the parent. So it's a good checks and balances for the student. For our purpose, we'll see that he's participated, but really for the school, it could be a way for the school to track to see who's working and who is not. It's kind of like now where the kid maybe shows up and he does really well in English class and then hates science. He's physically there, but he doesn't do anything. It's almost the same type of scenario.
Okay. Right now, I have all my students in a virtual group, but I know which ones want to go hybrid when we are allowed to come back to school. If I have each day marked as NTI, will it disturb anything on Infinite Campus if I make changes to the blended learning groups for the next month?
I think if the kids are all in a group, and if you move them from one group to the other, but they're still in a group, and then that group is attached to the NTI day, I don't feel or think that it would make a difference, Josh, unless you know differently. They just have to be in a group.
Yes, the only thing that I will say is if you do create a group during this time, you need to make sure that it is listed under the day and make sure that that group is listed under your blended learning group. Just if you're creating a new group, because that will not automatically enroll into the day tab.
Okay. If we set up so participation is only taken once per day and the teacher is required to take participation, which teacher is responsible for taking it if a student has 6 classes?
It's a district
That
decision.
would be a district decision. You know, if it's elementary, then I would say, of course, homeroom. You may even have a homeroom set up for your middle school. So that would really be a decision for the district to come up with how they want to do that.
Josh, that's all the questions on my end if you want to do the others.
During 100% virtual, if attendance clerks are not reconciling attendance, then how are we tracking truancy or neglect issues?
Truancy is actually in discussion as we speak. So as soon as I find out something concrete about what we can do or not do, I'll let you know. So Matt Ross is on the line as well. We talked about it earlier this morning, and so their conversations are they're still in conversation right now. So we'll get back to you on that question.
This one kind of goes along with the last question that Laura asked. Please explain how participation marks work for middle and high school students if the teacher marks participate for one course, but no other teacher marks student as participated. Does the student still get credit for a full day of participation?
Yes, they do. That's why for KDE purposes, we're just we'll see that they have a mark for participation. But now for the district, that should be really a red flag for that kid that they're not doing their work, and then the teacher could reach out with a phone call, or the same as they would now if a kid's just not participating and doing their work. You know, you would call the parent and maybe have a parent conference or send a letter home. So that would be how participation would be helpful with the checks and balances that we talked about earlier.
I would like to know what attendance code we are planning to use for virtual attendance so we have the same code. Are we going to have a state code for this? And this is talking about the posting for virtual attendance.
Is this the same code for the 9-6, the placeholder?
No, this is talking about the attendance if a student is not doing the their work and did not participate, they're asking if there is going to be a attendance code for that that writes back to the attendance table. And we kind of answered that at the very beginning of the questions. And right now, we are not currently tying any participation to attendance. We're not requiring districts to write the participation to the attendance tables. So as of right now, we do not have a code for COVID that will be on the attendance tab. I think that's all the questions I have. Most of them we've already answered in the other session.
Okay.
Let me see if there's any that's coming in. For clarification, we have scheduled our students as normal before COVID-19. So should we go into IC and set up one group for remote learning always?
You don't have to for NTI. You just want to make sure everybody's in a blended learning group, and then make sure you add that group to your NTI day.
Yes.
I think originally we did say, oh, you should have a in-seat, virtual, and then a group for everybody, but you don't have to do that now with this new functionality that we have for the NTI. So I think it makes life a lot easier the way they have it, where you can just add those groups. So I do hope that everyone logs in and watches that training. And also don't forget about campus community. Of course, I call it a little waffle. I click on the waffle and I can go in there and just search for blended learning, and all kinds of information will come up. And I actually went through all of it again, and I like that it's recorded, so you can go back and watch it again if you have a question. We do have documentation coming out as soon as things are, we get the okay that everyone signed off on guidance documents. We get them out to you as soon as we can. We have a lot of different offices throughout KDE working together on guidance, so some things may take a little bit longer because one office may know something that another office does not, and so we'll get together and try to figure it all out. So these are kind of uncharted waters for us this year, and I think that we should just call it the year of flexibility. So we are trying to work as fast as we can to move in front of you so that you don't have to re-change everything, but some things just take a little bit longer than others.
I do have another question that's come in. Does the posting virtual attendance functionality trigger the automatic phone calls to the parents saying the student is absent? And I'm not sure on that. That's something that we will send over to our OET group, and if not, we can follow up with Infinite Campus on a status call with that.
Thank you again for watching and participating and asking questions. I think these are helpful. We may try to get together in 2 weeks. It's kind of getting close to school will already be starting in most districts, so I'm not sure if we'll meet again, or maybe next Thursday. So we'll see what the needs are, and we'll send out an email in regards to our next meeting together. So I appreciate it, and thank you for your time today.